Hey, you guys. So today I am going to talk about how to move through those moments where you go in your closet, you put on your jeans, and it's just that moment where you realize that they feel tighter than they should, and it probably means that you've put on a couple of pounds. And we get into that like judgy mode about ourselves and our bodies. And I just want to share with you guys that there is a way to move through these moments with a little more ease and grace and kindness and compassion, most importantly, towards ourselves. So before I dive into the process that I use now around these kinds of things and pretty much everything in my life, I want to share a little bit about my own journey with all of this. I remember there was a period of time where literally I would feel uncomfortable going in my closet to get dressed because I was worried that when I pulled on my shorts or jeans or whatever the clothing happened to be, that I was going to get information back saying you've gained weight. And I knew that if that was the case, that it would set the pace, the trajectory, the mood, the tone for the day. And if I wasn't comfortable, then I would be watching my calories. I would probably work out excessively. And I am so grateful to know now that it doesn't have to be that way. And that even if I do put on a couple of pounds, I know that it's going to be okay. And there was a period of time where literally it would bring on a lot of anxiety for me. So what I realized today is that at some point along the line, I had bought into a belief that my weight and my appearance had a lot to do with my value and worth as a human being. And what I know now is that that is such a load of BS. And that while I like to take good care of myself and while I like to make sure that I get exercise, if I put on a couple pounds, it doesn't mean anything bad about me. But there really was a time when that's what I was making it mean. I was making it mean that there literally was something wrong with me and there was something that I needed to change right away. So what I want to talk about today is this process that I use now. And I use it regularly with any judgments or any conflict, so to speak, or any triggers come up in my life. And this particular area is, oh my gosh, it's just been a game changer for me to apply this. It's called the model. Apply the model towards anything that comes up around any sort of judgment that I have about myself. So, and I don't know about you, but I lived with a very harsh inner critic for decades. And so to have a way through is huge. So I'm actually going to be talking about the model. I'm also going to be sharing about some tools that I learned in the coach training that I graduated from, which is Diamond Process Coach Training Program. My teachers were and are Veronica Cresto and Jason Fromm. And then I'm also going to be sharing about the model, which I learned from Brooke Castillo of the Life Coach School. So the model is a 5-part process that I know now I've been doing for years and years and years. But when I look back, I realized I was using the model to my detriment. And once I learned about this and became conscious of what was going on, it opened up this opportunity for me to create shifts in my life and actively plug in any triggers or situations that came up into the model so that I could then, have an awareness and make the necessary changes. So before I get into the model, I want to talk a little bit about the thoughts that we think. And what I also have realized today is that so many of my thoughts were on autopilot. And my thoughts were generally as a result of beliefs that I had formed long ago. And so you might hear Ginger over here scratching. But anyway, so what I realize now is that I have the ability to choose my thoughts, but they were just on autopilot. And so it's taken a really disciplined, I've had to be very disciplined in my approach around becoming aware of my thoughts and recognizing that so many of my thoughts were not serving me. So it's exceptionally empowering. And this is something that I work on with my clients. It's exceptionally empowering to realize that you can think whatever you want. So, that being said, I want to jump in and talk a little bit about the model. The model is a 5-piece process, 5-step process. So it always begins with, and I made a little note card for you guys. Are you so excited? It always starts with a circumstance, and the circumstance is always going to be factual, which leads to a thought, which leads to a feeling, which leads then to an action or sometimes inaction, depending on the circumstance, which then gives you some sort of result, right? So what I'm going to share with you guys is how I used to use the model as it pertained to weight gain and clothes feeling tight. And I'm going to then share how I would use the model today and how I use it today. It's a yummy tea. So in both cases, the circumstance is going to be the same. My clothes are feeling tight. I've put on a couple pounds. Okay, that's the circumstance and it's a fact. All right, so in times past, my thought would be, oh my gosh, I've gained weight. I need to change something. I'm not acceptable the way that I am. I am not okay the way I am right now, which would then lead to feelings basically of anxiety. If I had to sum it up, it would be anxiety, discomfort in my own body, which would then lead to the action of overthinking, over exercise. And as my teachers, Veronica and Jason, explain it, it's ghosting the body, which is what I just think it's such a brilliant way to describe what we do when we are, whenever we try to avoid the emotion that we're feeling. So we ghost the body, we try to avoid by distracting with other things. So for me, I would put on my shoes and I would go walk for 2 or 3 hours sometimes. It could also be scrolling on social media, over drinking, drugs, shopping excessively. The list goes on. There's so many ways that we ghost our body. And so that would be the action. And then my result would just be more chaos, more self-judgment and criticism, and just this never-ending cycle of really abuse that I was putting myself through. So then I want to share about how I would use the model today. And so the circumstance is the same. I put on my clothes, they feel tight, I've put on a couple pounds. Okay, so again, this is a fact. So my thought now would be something I would intentionally choose, which would be, I may have put on a couple of pounds. My pants may be feeling a little bit tight, but I love what my body allows me to do every day. And it allows me to go for a walk in nature. It allows me to hug my family. It allows me to snuggle Ginger, my beloved dog, right? All the things that I can. And what I want to say about this is that the thought that you choose needs to be something that you believe. It needs to absolutely be something that you can get 100% behind. So if you're not ready to say my body is beautiful, then it may be more, just maybe more truthful to say my body allows me to do amazing things, right? So that would be the new thought, which would then lead to not feelings of anxiety, but feelings of acceptance and love and just well-being, right? Feeling more comfortable in my own body. And then the action to stem from that would be more self-care, taking steps in my life to have the body that I want, right? In this case, we're talking about weight gain. So I might just decide, okay, well, I'm going to cut back a little bit on sugar, um, make foods that are more healthful, or whatever the actions that we decide we're going to take, right? That are coming from that love based place, which is then going to result feeling more comfortable in your own skin and more accepting of yourself, and probably result in as well in releasing those couple of extra pounds that we brought on, right? So you can see those are two completely different experiences of the model. And one is very empowering and one feels so good, and the other is more disempowering, right? And it just perpetuates the cycle of chaos. That was my brain. You know, back in the day, there was just so much of that chaos that would happen. So the other thing that I want to touch on, and this is something that I learned a lot about in the Diamond Process Coach training program, and that is also the value and the importance of self-forgiveness. Because as I mentioned earlier, you know, when I realized I could choose my own thoughts, I also had to acknowledge that I chose the old thoughts. At some point I bought into those beliefs and I chose to believe the stuff that I was telling myself. And so the process of just coming home to myself and releasing and forgiving myself for having bought into those beliefs. So it may sound something like, I forgive myself for having bought into the misinterpretation, misunderstanding, or belief that my weight has anything to do with my worth as a human being. I forgive myself for having bought into the belief that I need to be skinny to be lovable, to be acceptable. And when I put my hands over my heart and I really feel into those statements, sometimes I would have to repeat it a few times and just really to feel it land in my soul. I sometimes have people ask, you know, how do I hear what you're saying, that sounds really good, but how do I stay consistent with this? How, and my answer, I can only share with you guys what I do. And that is to really make sure that I prioritize self-care every single day. And I know that this is kind of a buzzword, and sometimes when we hear about things all the time, they lose their sort of, almost feels like they lose their power or their relevance or significance. But all I can tell you is that for me, it has been the number one game changer. It is a non-negotiable every single day that I take time for myself and I do things that really connect me to the truth and the essence of who I am. So, which is not all the, you know, chaos and the drama, and it's part of my story of the things that happened, but it's not really the truth of who I am. And just those moments, I try to create moments in my life where I remember that. And the more I do that, I remember Veronica, my teacher, saying, up your self-care, you guys, up your self-care. And I really have goosebumps right now because it's so true. It's seriously the number one game changer, because when I'm really on top of my self-care and I'm really loving myself and finding ways to have my own back, everything else just gets a little bit easier, and I'm so much more likely to make choices that feel loving towards myself, and I'm more likely to make the choices that are going to create the kind of life that I want for myself, and to create the kind of feelings inside myself that I hold so dear. So the answer, I would just say, is more and more self-care every day. And it's really not, some people might say that that's selfish, but the truth of the matter is that when I'm really good with me and I take that time for myself every day, which means for me journaling and earthing, where I take off my shoes and just go put my feet in the grass. And um, you know, there's a lot of different um, or habits and pastimes that I like to bring into my daily life that just keep me connected in that way. So it depends on what feels resonant for you, but those particular habits and making it a priority definitely is what helps me to continue feeling grounded within myself, and it helps me to continue making choices that create these good, yummy, scrumptious feelings within myself. And of course I have my moments, not gonna lie. I mean, I have my moments, absolutely, for sure, we all do, and that's part of this human experience. But that's really the number one thing for me that's changed my life is self-care. So anyway, I hope this has been helpful for you guys. I'm so happy to be here sharing with you, and if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And I'm so looking forward to seeing you here in the next video. All right, have a beautiful day.